What is up, Packers fans? Happy Thursday. Welcome into an all-new episode of the Pack a Day Podcast. I'm your host, Andy Herman. You can follow me on Twitter at Andy Herman NFL. You can find the podcast at Pack a Day Podcast. As always, thank you so much for being here. If this is your first time here, welcome. Hope you enjoy the show. Make sure to like, subscribe, comment, give those 5-star reviews. Those things always help the channel a ton. My apologies for being a bit delayed here. This is likely uploading a few hours later than normal on this Thursday. We had some storms run through the area on Wednesday night, knocked out the power just as I was about to hit the record button. So I had to go early Thursday morning rather than late Wednesday night. Usually I record the night before, but again, we had some storm issues in the area, some power issues. So here we are just a few hours later than normal. Appreciate your patience with that. Today, we're going to kick off what I kind of consider part 2 of a 3-part series as we look at this Packers roster going into training camp. A couple weeks ago, we did a 53-man roster projection on what I think this roster could look like after training camp is done, once cuts are completed. And again, who makes the 53, who makes the practice squad, and who just gets outright released. You can check that video and audio out. Again, it was uploaded about a couple weeks ago, 53-man roster projection after mini camp and OTAs. About a couple weeks from now, what I'm probably going to be doing is going over which players on this 90-man roster actually have a real legitimate chance to make the 53. Like if you really look at it close enough, who can actually, even maybe with a couple injuries here or there, or just again, if they play really well in camp, who can make the 53, who's more of a lock to make the 53, and who basically has like no chance of making the 53, and even maybe the practice squad. So we're going to look at that a little bit closer in like a couple weeks from now. But today what I want to look at is just what this depth chart looks like right now. This is not a prediction of who's going to make the 53. This is not a prediction of what that depth chart is going to look like on week 1 when the Packers take on the Detroit Lions. It's more of where did the players stand in the depth chart right now as we get ready for the start of training camp? Who's going to have the opportunity to practice with the 1s, the 2s, the 3s, etc. So we're going to go position by position and look at where players are positioned currently on their spot in the depth chart. We're going to start at quarterback, which is a pretty straightforward one. Jordan Love's your starter. Malik Willis is your number 2. Sean Clifford is your 3, and then Taylor Elgersma is a 4. And this is a great example of, I think there's a real chance that Elgersma beats out Sean Clifford for that number 3 spot. But as of right now, Sean Clifford has been the clear number 3, and Elgersma has been the clear number 4. We've only seen a smattering of snaps from Taylor Elgersma. He'll work down with the 2s behind both Malik Willis and Sean Clifford. In like the 7-on-7s, we only got to see a couple reps with Elgersma, and I don't think we saw a single 2-minute drill with Taylor Elgersma. That's always been Sean Clifford with the number 3s. So it's been not very often that we've got to see Elgersma actually work in there, even with the 3s. I'm sure he worked down when they separated the 2 units. I'm sure he worked a little bit more with the 3s and 4s down at the other end, and we just didn't get to see it because we were all kind of focused on watching the 1s. But it definitely is very evident that Elgersma is the number 4 right now. Now, as far as how that works come training camp, I'm going to be interested. Now, the only way that I could see it really being a situation where Elgersma does not get any opportunity really at all is one of 2 things. Either A, he's just that raw and just needs a ton of work, or B, it's the opposite. They think he's massively talented and they just don't even want to showcase him to the world via either training camp or preseason. And knowing that if they do, his opportunity to get claimed when they release him is exponentially high. And so therefore, they're not going to showcase him to the world so they can get him back on the practice squad. I think you play with fire a little bit in that scenario because don't you want him getting reps in case something does happen to Jordan or Malik Willis if he's that talented? So I don't think that that's going to ultimately be the case. And I do think he will get a real fair shake to compete with Sean Clifford come training camp in preseason. But as of right now, he is number 4 on that list, and Sean Clifford is the number 3. Again, easy to say Malik Willis is the 2 and Jordan Love is the 1. At running back, it's a bit more interesting. Number 1 is easy, Josh Jacobs. Number 5 and 6 in some way, shape, or form are Amar Johnson and Jalen White. You can order those 2 how you please. I would put Amar Johnson at 5 and Jalen White at 6, but again, you can make a determination there how you please. Numbers 2, 3, and 4 are a bit more interesting. And the truth of the matter is there probably just isn't a designation between the 3. They're all kind of in the same mix at the moment, battling for a 2, 3, and 4 spot on a roster that may or may not contain either 3 or 4 running backs. We just don't know what they're ultimately going to keep at this point in time. The easy thing to know here is that Marshawn Lloyd, again, is going to make the roster barring injury on the 53 as a 3rd-round pick and just being a super talented player. So he's not going anywhere. As we talked about on the 53-man roster projection, the question comes between Emmanuel Wilson and Chris Brooks. I think for the time being, how you have to just view this is that Marshawn Lloyd, Emmanuel Wilson, and Chris Brooks are all on sort of that same line. All of them can earn the number 2 spot. All of them can earn the number 3 spot, and all of them could earn the number 4 spot. If you told me that this was Jacobs, Wilson, Brooks, Lloyd, I could believe that. I think that would probably mean that Lloyd either had some injury issues again or struggle with fumbles and pass protection. But if that's the case, I could see him getting behind Chris Brooks and Emmanuel Wilson. If that's the case, we know they're also keeping 4 running backs because, again, they're not going to cut Marshawn Lloyd. Brooks and Wilson are more at risk where if either of them become the number 4 guy, they could ultimately get released. So they have a lot to battle for, but I do think it's going to be a very open competition. And I do think as of right now, any of those 3, again, can line up as the 2nd, the 3rd, or the 4th back. I think Chris Brooks is the number 2, might be a little bit less likely, but it just depends on how you want to look at it. As a 3rd down back, if you're looking at somebody who might line up in the backfield on an obvious passing down on 3rd downs, Chris Brooks is one of the top guys. He has the ability to pass protect, catch the ball out of the backfield. He's still a good runner. Like, he gives you all of those options. So it just kind of depends on what you're looking for, which again, I think makes that battle so unique and so interesting is Lloyd, Wilson, and Brooks are all 3 very different running backs. So again, order them how you want to. I think the truth is they're all basically on the same line, with Jacobs being the top guy, Amar Johnson and Jalen White a tier behind, and all those 3 are in the mix for the 2, 3, and 4 spots. Wide receiver is, I think, a little bit interesting as well, and sort of similar with how you kind of look at it. I think right now, you sort of have to put this in tiers. I think tier 1 is Romeo Doubs, Jaden Reed, Dontavian Wicks, and Matthew Golden. And yes, I do think Golden is already in that conversation. You might be able to put Golden just a slight tier below Wicks, Reed, and Doubs at the moment. It's tough to say. We see them all rotate in with the ones, and I think all of them are going to get playing time. I don't think there's a massive distinction right now. I think if I were to maybe do it, I would say Romeo Doubs and Jaden Reed are sort of your first line. I think Doubs is going to get a ton of playing time as an outside wide receiver, and Reed's going to get a ton of time as your slot wide receiver. I think that's kind of line 1. I think line 2 is Wicks and Golden, just right below that first line, where I think Wicks and Golden are going to have to earn it a little bit more at the moment, but I still think they're going to get a ton of snaps with the one. So maybe just a slight tier below Doubs and Reed, but not by much. And then after that, you get to the next tier, which I believe at the moment, is Hardman, Heath, and Melton. And all 3 of those get to practice with the ones. All 3 of them are probably fighting for potentially 1, maybe 2 roster spots. We'll see how things kind of play out. But I think those 3 are all on that next line and all battling to try to make it on the 53 and be active on game days and those sort of things. So again, tier 1, Doubs and Reed. Tier 2, Wicks and Golden. Tier 3, Hardman, Heath, and Melton. For now, the next tier would be Savion Williams. We know, again, that Savion Williams isn't going anywhere. He's going to make the team. He's not ultimately going to be on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, the 8th wide receiver, which is where we're putting him on this tiered list right now. We know that's not going to be the case. But as you looked at practice at OTAs and minicamps, Doubs, Reed, Wicks, Golden, Hardman, Heath, and Melton all got time with the ones. Savion Williams did not. He was down with the 2s and 3s the entire time. So he's going to have opportunities. I think he will eventually get maybe some of those reps with the ones as well. But for right now, he's on that next tier, that 4th tier of wide receivers, really in his own category. I would then put Julian Hicks and Cornelius Johnson on the next tier, and then probably Sam Brown Jr. on the lowest tier. So that's how I would kind of order it as of right now. Of course, we know Christian Watson's going to come back at some point as well, and he would be on that top tier when he comes back. But for now, Doubs and Reed, tier 1, Wicks and Golden, tier 2, Hardman, Heath, and Melton, tier 3, Savion Williams, tier 4, Julian Hicks and Cornelius Johnson, tier 5, and Sam Brown Jr., tier 6, with Watson eventually getting back in that conversation on tier 1. Tight end, also one of the more straightforward ones. Tucker Kraft is your 1, Musgrave is your 2, Johnny Lumpkin is your 6, and I think 3, 4, and 5 is between Fitzpatrick, Sims, and Swinson. And if I had to order them right now, I would go Fitzpatrick 3, Sims 4, Swinson 5. Swinson 5 is probably the easiest, although I do think he has the ability to have some upward mobility there. I think Fitzpatrick and Sims are closer, but it does seem like Fitzpatrick is just a step ahead right now as the 3, and Ben Sims seems to be the 4. So that's how I would label those 6. Again, Kraft, Musgrave, and Lumpkin are easy. Fitzpatrick probably the 3, Sims probably the 4, Swinson probably the 5. Offensive line, we get into a bit more interesting conversation because some of these players are going to be on multiple lines, right? So we're going to label them tackle, guard, and center, but some players are in between either tackle and guard or guard and center. So it makes it a little bit more interesting. At tackle individually, right? I see Zach Tom and Rasheed Walker currently. Well, let's put it this way. Zach Tom is tier 1 because we know he is going to be a legit, really great starter. Tier 2 is Rasheed Walker and Jordan Morgan. I wholeheartedly expect them to compete at left tackle. And I even think that we end up in a rotation between Walker and Morgan at left tackle, where Walker's probably the just a little bit better player right now, but Morgan has higher upside. And you know that probably Walker's going to, walk in free agency next year and Morgan probably takes over. So I think you just get him those reps. So I think Walker and Morgan are tier 2. I think you probably end up with an interesting tier 3, but I'm just going to put Anthony Belton there. I think being a second round pick and based on the talent, Kadeem Telfort and maybe somebody like that could be maybe a little bit ahead at the moment just because of the experience in the system. But I think it's a pretty easy answer that Belton is just going to be that next guy and kind of that tier 3 guy. Tier 4 would be Kadeem Telfort. And then Travis Glover, I would kind of put as a tier below that. And then Brant Banks, even a tier below that. So Tom, Walker and Morgan, Belton, Telfort, Glover, Banks. That's how I would order the tackle depth chart at the moment. At guard, I think for the moment, again, you have Banks and Ryan as your starters. I would put Banks probably as your tier 1. He's not having any competition, right? At tier 2, I do think Jordan Morgan has the ability to compete with Sean Ryan. I would put Ryan just a slight tier ahead, followed by Jordan Morgan as your number 3. And then I think Kadeem Telfort is currently your 4. Anthony Belton, I would put as the 5, even though we haven't seen him there yet. I think he probably would slot in there if anything happens, followed by probably some order of either Jacob Monk or Donovan Jennings. I think those are kind of tier 6, followed by Travis Glover at tier 7. I'm going to put John Williams after that at 8, and then Cooper and JJ Lippy after that in like kind of the next tier. So a lot of players that have the ability to play guard. I think the things to know here again are Banks is probably your unquestioned starter at guard. I don't think Jenkins gets back in this conversation just because I think he's the starting center. And I think you would probably just keep him at center and not have to move anyone else to center to move him to guard. So I don't think he's in this conversation. So Banks, Ryan, Morgan, Telfort, Belton, and again, Telfort and Belton, you could put in either order there. Monk, Jennings, Glover, John Williams, Tyler Cooper, and JJ Lippy in that order. Center, Elton Jenkins is your 1. I actually think Sean Ryan is probably your true 2, even though they played Monk there for the most part in OTAs and mini camps. I just think they knew that Jenkins is going to be the starter, so why move Ryan over there a ton when it's probably going to be Jenkins as your 1, and then again, just put Monk in there for the time being because he's a little bit more of a natural center. But I think it will actually be Sean Ryan that backs up Jenkins if something were to happen, Monk after that, and then Trey Hill after that. I moved to the defensive side of the ball. We'll start with defensive end. Rashawn Gary's your 1. LVN is your 2. For the time being, I think Enigbare and Brenton Cox are kind of that next tier as your tier 3. Baron Sorrell, I think, would be after that, followed by Colin Oliver. Aaron Mosby is probably in that conversation with Colin Oliver as well, but it gets a little bit more complicated because, again, Mosby's not, I don't think, going to be able to beat out Baron Sorrell or Colin Oliver. He might get some playing time ahead of him for now because he has that experience. I don't think it would be like super stunning if Mosby somehow found a way onto the roster, but it's probably going to be via an injury or some surprise cut if they do end up releasing like a Kingsley Enigbare or trading him and still keeping 6 defensive ends. Like that would be one potential way, but I think Mosby's probably just a little bit on the outside looking in with all the new defensive ends that they added at the moment. And then I think Deslin Alexander's at the bottom on a tier all on his own. So Gary, followed by LVN, followed by then Enigbare and Cox, followed by Sorrell, and then probably Oliver and Mosby, and then Deslin Alexander after that. Defensive tackle, Kenny Clark and Devontae Wyatt in that tier 1, Carl Brooks and Colby Wooden in that tier 2. Then I would say Brinson is your tier 3, followed by Stackhouse. And then you get a whole tier of James Esther, Nesta Jade Silvera, Cameron Young, and Keith Randolph. If I had to order them right now, I would put them in that order: Esther, then Silvera, then Young, then Randolph. But those 4 pretty much on their own tier, trying to battle it out, probably for practice squad spots. Maybe somebody can get in that conversation from that group of 4, but for now, they seem to be more, kind of backup practice squad guys, and a few of them probably just end up released off the roster. But pretty easy designation overall with Clark and White on your first tier, Brooks and Wooden on the second tier, Brinson on the 3, Stackhouse on the 4, and then everyone else on tier 5. Linebacker, Quay Walker, Edgerrin Cooper, tier 1. Isaiah McDuffie, tier 2. Then I think Simmons and Hopper are that tier 3. Christian Welch is tier 4, and then Jamon Johnson, tier 5. So Walker, Cooper going to get a ton of the playing time starting, and I'm not really taking them off the field unless you're in diamond only playing one linebacker. Isaiah McDuffie, probably the starter in base, and then filling in on anything after that. Isaiah Simmons and Tyron Hopper, I think, competing for any snaps after that. Christian Welch competing for a special teams job, and then Jamon Johnson as a UDFA, just trying to get himself in the good graces to make the practice squad and then fight for anything after that. Corner, I think Nixon and Hobbs are kind of that tier 1. I think that Nixon and Hobbs are tier 1 because I think they're going to play no matter what. Even in a situation where Javon Bullard is on the field as your nickel corner, I think Hobbs and Nixon are out there, and I think Valentine gets taken off from time to time. So I think Nixon and Hobbs are tier 1. Valentine is tier 2. Then I think you have Haddon, Micah Robinson, and Kamal King as tier 3. Gregory Jr. is probably tier 4 with Tyron Herring and Isaiah Dunn as tier 5. I think that's a pretty easy sort of order of operations there at corner. If you want to put Valentine on the first line, go for it. I just think he probably does get taken off the field some when you want to go Javon Bullard in the slot. As far as slot corner goes, I'm kind of putting its own designation here. I think Nate Hobbs is your primary slot corner, but I do think Javon Bullard will see some time there as well. If you need somebody else to play there, I think there's a real chance that you could slot Keyshawn Nixon back in that spot, or at least play him there from time to time. So I'm kind of putting him there as the third line, followed by Kalen King. And then I think Jonathan Baldwin would be next up after that, even though he's a safety. So is Bullard, right? You can still play those guys there from time to time. So Hobbs, Bullard, Nixon, King, and Baldwin in that slot corner position. At safety, Xavier McKinney is your first guy. I think Evan Williams is your true number 2. Bullard is your 3. I think you then get Oladapo and Zane Anderson kind of as your tier 4 there. Omar Brown after that is 5. Jonathan Baldwin as 6. And then Kazir Brown as 7 after that. So again, I think some of these are fairly easy. I think safety is pretty straightforward. Maybe Bullard could get in that conversation with Evan Williams a little bit more, but I think for now, Evan Williams is ahead, followed by Javon Bullard. Kicker, Brandon McManus is the guy. Alex Hale just remains on the roster for now. That's how I would just kind of define it. Daniel Whalen at punter, and then Matt Orzech as your long snapper. That is your full depth chart as is right now. Just to run through it really, really quick to kind of wrap things up here. Jordan Love, Malik Willis, Sean Clifford, El Gersma at quarterback, Jacobs, then Lloyd Wilson, Brooks as running backs, and then Amar Johnson and Jalen White after that. Wide receiver, Romeo Dobbs, Jaden Reed, tier 1, Wicks and Golden, tier 2, Hardman, Heath, Melton, tier 3, followed by Savion Williams, then Hicks and Cornelius Johnson, followed by Sam Brown with Christian Watson getting tier 1 once he comes back. Tucker Kraft 1, Luke Musgrave 2, then sort of Fitzpatrick, Sims, Swinson, and then Lumpkin is the bottom of the roster after that. Tackle, Zach Tom, followed by Rasheed Walker and Jordan Morgan, followed by Anthony Belton, then Telfort, then Travis Glover, then Brant Banks. At guard, Aaron Banks, followed by Sean Ryan, followed by Jordan Morgan, then Telfort, Belton, Monk, Jennings, Glover, Williams, Cooper, and Lippy. At center, Elton Jenkins, Sean Ryan, Jacob Monk, and Trey Hill. Defensive end, Rashawn Gary, then LVN, then Enigbari and Cox, then Sorrell and Oliver, Aaron Mosby, and Deslin Alexander. Defensive tackle, Clark and Wyatt, followed by Brooks and Wooden, followed by Brinson, then Stackhouse, then a group of Esther, Jade Silvera, Cameron Young, and Keith Randolph. Linebacker, you've got Walker and Cooper, followed by McDuffie, followed by Simmons and Hopper, then Christian Welch, then Jamon Johnson. Corner, Keyshawn Nixon and Nate Hobbs, then Valentine, then a group of Haddon, Robinson, and King, followed by Gregory Jr., Tyron Herring, and Isaiah Dunn. Nickelback, Hobbs, Bullard, Nixon, King, and Baldwin. Safety, Xavier McKinney, Evan Williams, Javon Bullard, then Oladapo and Zane Anderson, Omar Brown, Jonathan Baldwin, and Kazir Brown. Kicker, McManus, then Hale. Punter, Daniel Whalen. Long snapper is Matt Orzech. That's the depth chart as I see it right now. Of course, there will be movement throughout the course of training camp. As that happens, I will be out there as your eyes and ears, covering everything for you. And of course, discussing it all here on the Pack a Day podcast. Training camp's the best time. Make sure you are subscribed, and a great time to be a member as well. You're going to get those episodes a little bit early if you're a member. There's a bunch of episodes out there for next week right now if you've signed up to be a member as well. So make sure to check out those membership options. I'll be right back here tomorrow with an all-new episode. Shout out to our All-Pro and Hall of Fame members, Most Hated Minnesotan, PJ Wynn, John Wild, Brandon Paletta, Boom Handle, Donald Lee, Lori Lord, Baby QB, David McCluskey, Donald Decker, Alex Wong, Peter Ritaka, Jay Zimmerman, B. Brown, Puerto Rican Packer, Dan Gesford, Dylan Pat Scott, SoCal Pack, Chris Rager, Izzy Roberts, Ian Ewing, Jake Koner, Carlo Delgado, Willie Winklestinkle, Jen Wright, The Gable Storm, Matt Geiger, Pack Attack Cast, and Chris Weish. I'll see you guys tomorrow, but until next time, and as always, go Pack Go.